Hello, and welcome to Vision Denial and World Watch 2022. My name is Sam, and if those of you who are new here, I have watched every single playoff of 2022. Yes, every single one of them, even that one. Notably, this particular series we were covering the summer of 2022 on our anticipation and preparation for Worlds. And this you have stumbled upon, or you are a regular subscriber and watcher, to the Meet the Teams portion, where I will take a look at every 24 team, their strengths, weaknesses, play styles, notable quirks, interesting things to look ahead, all in the attempts to at least teach some people who don't watch certain regions what to expect from their teams, or from the teams that are going. That said, there are two caveats to really put forward. First caveat: a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about are data-driven. I will put a link down below to the Google Docs of all of the data I have aggregated all in one nice spot. All of the data comes from the LOL fandom, Wikipedia, and from the goal.gg website, both of which have very different focuses to their data points, and both are necessary for these kinds of videos to work. That said, there's a limitation to some of this data because the LPL doesn't send their data as consistently as the other regions, and this is something you'll find with any particular data point for LoL esports globally. The LPL will still be missing some things regarding plates, drakes at 15 minutes, and heralds. A lot of their early game is not there. That and everything relating to vision. Second thing that I have to point out, a lot of the emerging regions, specifically Oceania, Turkey, Brazil, Latin America, and Japan, their teams will have some inflated stats in their favor. That being in mind, when we're looking at their stats, a lot of them will look good, notably the Chiefs and Detonation Focus Me. So some of the stats for every team has to be taken with a grain of salt of either being maybe stronger than expected or weaker than expected by quite a bit, notably because of this kind of inflation of statistics. When you're studying data, this is the kind of adjustments you need to do. That said, team-based data will look skewed. Individual data for each player's less so, because of the kinds of data points that they keep track of. All of that to say is that a lot of the notes that I've taken are using data points that have been collected that you can all enjoy for free down below, or in the various websites that I mentioned, but taking into account a lot of the personal notes that I use in conjunction with this data to show you what to expect with these teams. Without further ado, let's take a look at this video's team. I don't know. This is a pre-recorded message. Let's take a look. Let's meet DenizBank Istanbul Wildcats. They are the last team to qualify for the World Championships after beating Fenerbahce in 3-2 in a mostly convincing fashion. This is an interesting take because this is a fairly dominant team for the region. Let's meet the coach. The Kep has been part of the coaching staff since 2022, but having been part of like analyst and academy positions primarily beforehand, but mostly from the 2020 and 2021 season. But this fairly new coach has done a lot of good work in the last 2 years. And with him has 5 different analysts behind him. Jenkins, Blastoise, Vanrong, Robogot, and Voin, all as an analyst team together, the 5 of them have managed to find a way to pull the Wildcats in a very solidly put together position. Their particular style involves side lane pressure when ahead and early game dominance into the bot side, really pushing in the we fight to take things. Very solid Drake awareness, very solid plates for the bot side, but This comes at the risk of losing out heralds, being fairly wishy-washy when it comes to the mid to late game, as things seem to slow down and wait for Drake timers, and their win rate, while fantastic ahead, is honestly something to be concerned about, as they don't have a strong win rate for a region where they should be a lot more competitive. 77.8% is great, but if you're this one-sided one ahead, your ballooning is looking very shoddy at best. Let's meet the Wildcats top laner, StarScreen. StarScreen's been with this particular team since 2019. He's not known any other teams, made his debut with this particular org, and will stay with it for as long as many people think that he will. Now, taking a look at his stats, he looks fairly under average for the most part. His KDA is fairly solid, and a lot of the way that his stats are presented and the way that he tends to play really shows off a side laning first mentality, but that's primarily because he's left to his own device. He's a weak side player playing a lot of team fighting options. He has the least amount of champs, and almost none of them are for side lane pressure, and almost all of them are for team fighting or some mixture of it. StarScreen is incredibly competent, but his team is set into a position where a lot of focus is set to the bot side of the map, and he's left to his devices to just soak up any pressure if somebody takes it. It'll be really interesting to see if he can keep up with the rest of any of the other top laners, as not a lot of competition was set to him, and he was able to get away with a lot more than he really should have. Let's meet the jungler of the Wildcats. Ferret over here has also been part of the Wildcats since 2019, and honestly, he's done fairly well for himself as being part of this organization. That said, when you look at him compared to the other junglers, he just does not cut it, and for a myriad of reasons. Not only is his champion pool fairly fixed, but the vast majority of his games, nearly half of them, are on Wukong only, leaving a fairly narrow approach for him in his given playstyle. His KDA is low, his gold per minute is absurdly low compared to the others, and that'd be one thing if he would have a high kill participation or kill share compared to the others, but he doesn't have either. Ferret is a mostly passive jungler who doesn't really do anything to compete against his opponents because he doesn't need to. His bot laner and his mid laner do most of the work for him, and while Serin and HolyPheonix do a lot of work, he needs to put in the time or he will get punished by his contemporaries. But it's just going to be a matter of what happens there. We'll see if he can compete, or if he's going to be left in the dust like many others. Meet the Wildcats mid laner, Serin. And Serin made his debut in the 2020 season with Istanbul Wildcats and has stayed with him since. And out of all of the players, he is the most clutch, a definite player to watch. And by all means, he is the playmaker. He plays a lot of different champions here who, amongst his other contemporaries on a very stacked set of field, the highest kill share and highest gold share percentages compared to any of the others. He makes things happen, and he does so proactively himself. He's got a fairly high KDA compared to many of the others, and keeps up in his gold per minute in a fairly convincing way that I could see him compete solidly against many, if not most, of the other mid laners across this particular roster. Serin here will have a huge amount of leg weight, or a lot of lifting to do for his team, as many of them don't quite keep up with their counterparts, while he does. Let's meet the bot laner of Istanbul Wildcats, HolyPheonix. honestly probably the success factor for the team. He's been a part of the scene since 2012, being part of so many different teams, having a brief stint with Fenerbahce in the 2020 before returning to Istanbul Wildcats in the 2021 season, and has been there since. And what else is to say? Look at his KDA. He has the second highest KDA amongst players coming into the tournament and the highest one amongst bot laners. And you can tell he's already just a solid team fighter. They put a lot of investment into HolyPheonix to really succeed. And then you look at the rest of his stats. His gold per minute doesn't hold up compared to his contemporaries. His CS per minute doesn't hold up compared to his contemporaries. And his flexibility with his champions are rather interesting, but also indicate that he's not really leaning super hard into the meta. It's partially a good thing, allows more flexibility, but also partially concerning, as it is a way to abuse different champions, especially the picks that you can go with a certain set of combinations of different, compositions. So HolyPheonix will be really interesting if his team fighting prowess can translate and compete, as well as keep up with any of his other bot lane counterparts. I'm not super convinced, but time will tell. Let's meet the support of the Wildcats. Farfetch. Farfetch over here is been a pretty good mainstay within the scene since 2017, jumping back and forth through a variety of different rosters before finally landing in Istanbul Wildcats for the 2021 season, and has stayed since. Look at that. He is notable here because he does stand above average most of the other support players. Above average in terms of KDA, kill participation, and same with his number of champions, as well as the fact that because this team is fairly focused on team fighting, it makes sense that he has the highest kill participation amongst all of his own players. And honestly, I think where Serin and HolyPheonix are the stars and the clutch factor of the team, Farfetch is the enabler. He makes sure that any particular zone is controlled for them, enough peeling is done, so that they can maximize all of the potential damage that can be dealt from his carries. And he does an excellent job. I think that he'll compete just fine against any of the other support players, and then some. My only issue, though, is that the consistency in terms of vision is not there for this team, and he may have to do a lot more work than usual just to be able to get the same kind of enabling that he needs for the rest of his players. All in all, the Wildcats, for as dominant as they were in the TCL in Turkey, really leave something to be desired. Their performance during any parts of the playoffs or during the regular season in summer have little grains of brilliance, but then are mostly mattered with what is going on. They're largely unchallenged competition, coupled with the fact that their stats don't have that same ballooning effect that would come from other teams who have zero competition to them, leave me slightly worried about how they're going to overall perform. They have some talent here that can compete, but the consistency and how much can they compete is left up into the air, really. And when I compare who they're going to be facing here, they're in the same kind of boat as Isidus in the sense that you're up against DRX, where I'll never give up, Saigon Buffaloes, teams that are just going to keep going and are going to punish for any kind of inaction or lack of patience. This is going to be a race between them and Isidus more than anything else, and maybe trying to find upsets against Mad Lions? Maybe. For the most part, I'm not convinced they'll make it out, and it will be really a test to see if they can even get No, I can see them getting one win, but I want to see how far they can get. If they can get anywhere between 2 to 3 wins, that's a bonus. That's a chance out of play-ins. But nothing is giving me the confidence that they'll make it even that far. But those are my thoughts based off of what I've watched in terms of playoffs across all of the regions, all 383 games, as well as the stats that are in front of me and what have been collected. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think there's like an inkling of a chance or even a greater chance that they'll make it out? Or are you in the same boat, kind of defeated and expecting the idea that the Wildcats will not be able to perform as solidly? I'd love to hear your thoughts and everything down below. And across all the different corners here, you'll be seeing how did the Wildcats get here, as well as like different playlists for all of the different playoffs that I've reviewed, the different things I've seen in the last couple of weeks, and my thoughts regarding that, and all of the other teams. Take a look at those. If you like this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe. And with that, I'll see you next time. Have a good one.